What's going on, Packer fans? Welcome back to the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Today, I'm going to be talking about a topic that probably none of you really want to hear or talk about, which is always a great way to get views and listens, etc. But I want to talk about the wide receiver position and specifically why Green Bay may not and maybe even should not go wide receiver in the first round in this year's draft. And I know immediately what you're thinking. Andy, how can you possibly say this? They traded away Davante Adams. They are in desperate need of wide receivers. Right now, you're looking at Sammy Watkins and Randall Cobb and Allen Lazard, and that is not a wide receiver group that is conducive to winning, playoff games and winning games consistently when you need to put up points, right? Because at some point, your defense is going to let you down. At some point, you need to put up points, and I hear 100% what you are saying. But before I even jump into all the different reasons that I want to go over, what we should start to understand is that unless Green Bay trades, for a wide receiver that becomes available, one of these top players, Terry McLaurin, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, etc. Unless they make a significant trade that probably involves some of their first round picks, in which case they would not be selecting a wide receiver in the first round. Unless they do that, there is no perfect scenario that they're just going to be able, you can immediately say, well, just move up and get X receiver, whoever you're thinking, and that's going to solve all the problems. It would probably help, but we can't just immediately think like look at Jerry Jeudy, even Devontae Smith, who had a really nice season a year ago. Some of these really nice wide receivers out of the University of Alabama that were ready to contribute right away. And go back and watch Devontae Smith or Jerry Jeudy as rookies. Really nice football players, no question about it. You're not replacing Davante Adams, and you're not all of a sudden putting fear in the hearts of defenses. And those were some of the top wide receivers in those drafts. Now, if you can get a Jamar Chase or a Justin Jefferson, that's a horse of a different color, and that's certainly an ideal scenario. I don't think that there is that. I'm sure one of the wide receivers are going to just go off, but you don't know which one that is. And it's really difficult to say, and everyone has their favorites and so on and so forth, but it's just difficult to say you're going to draft one or two of these wide receivers and just wipe your hands of everything, problem solved. This is going to have to be an offense that has a bunch of different pieces at wide receiver that can do a variety of different things. And Green Bay undoubtedly needs to add a speed wide receiver that can take the top off of a defense, whether that's in the first round or the fifth round, some threat to take off the top of the defense and really threaten them, and have to have the safeties focus a little bit more on staying deep, just a different change of pace wide receiver than they have on the roster. And you would love for them to get some sort of additional playmaker who can get the ball in his hands and make some plays. There's no question that Green Bay has open spots on this team that they need to fill, and they need to be aggressive in doing so. And if that happens in the first round, so be it, but it very well may not happen, which is what we're going to exactly go over today. So there's no perfect scenario here. No matter what happens, no matter who they draft, no matter what round they draft them in, you can't just be like, okay, that solves all of Green Bay's problems at wide receiver and they're good to go. Like I said, you draft one of these top receivers early and it should help. No two ways about it. But I want to just get it out there that does not fix all of Green Bay's problems, and they're not going to probably be the most prolific passing offense in the NFL after losing Davante Adams, Robert Tonyan coming off a torn ACL. They're going to have to be a very well-rounded offense and a more well-rounded team where the special teams does their part, the defense takes another step up in the right direction, and they are a very good football team, not just a team that has to be the number one team in offense, tries to get by on defense, and is abysmal on special teams. So it's just going to be a different Green Bay Packers team. And again, the big thing there is even if they draft a Garrett Wilson, a Jameson Williams, any of those guys, anyone, Drake London, etc., any of the top receivers, it just doesn't immediately fix everything. At least probably not. There's always that chance you get the next, Justin Jefferson or, Jamar Chase, etc. But those have been few and far between more often than not. So there's a lot of reasons that I want to go over this. I'm going to throw a lot of different stuff at you. The biggest thing that I want us to start rethinking here is that it's not just the fact that the first pick ends up being your best pick. In fact, over the last 30 years, since Ron Wolf took over and then a brief hiccup with Mike Sherman and then going right into Ted Thompson and Brian Gutekunst, in the past 30 years, you could maybe argue that 10 of those years, the first pick or the first round pick was actually their best pick in that draft. 1994, probably Aaron Taylor, although you could make a very strong case for Dorsey Levens as well. And if you wanted to go Dorsey, I certainly would not argue that against you. So that one's maybe up in the air. 1998, probably Vonnie Holliday. But if you want to talk better long-term career, you could probably put Matt Hasselbeck ahead of Vonnie Holliday. 2003, definitely Nick Barnett. 2005, definitely Aaron Rodgers. 2009, Clay Matthews, but technically BJ Raji was the first pick in that draft for the Packers. So even though Matthews was a first, their first pick, Raji, was not their best pick in that draft. It was actually Matthews. 2010 was Brian Bulaga. 2016 was Kenny Clark. 18 was Alexander. 21 was Stokes. And then 19, probably Rashawn Gary, although you could make an argument that Elton Jenkins has had the bigger impact over the last 3 years than Gary. So you could make an argument there too. But even if you went with those 10 first-round picks that were the best in their class, that's still 10 out of 30. 1 out of every 3 draft classes is the first person or their first-round pick actually their best player long-term. That's like, again, one third of the time. So it's not like you're just saying, all right, whoever Green Bay picks first, that's going to be the best player. So if Green Bay picks receivers in the second, fourth, and sixth rounds, they have just as good a chance, if not better chance, of being the best player in that draft than it does if they use their first round pick on it. And again, 1 out of every 3 times is one of their first round picks actually the best player from that draft class. In addition, if any franchise's fans should know that you can find good wide receivers outside of the first round, it should be Green Bay Packer fans. I don't know, Devontae Adams, second round, Randall Cobb, second round, Jordy Nelson, second round, James Jones, third round, Greg Jennings, second round, Donald Driver, seventh round, Antonio Freeman, third round, Robert Brooks, third round. You get my point. In fact, only 2 players in Packer history that are on the top receiving list, and I think the top 15 or 20, Sterling Sharp and James Lofton, the only 2 that were taken in the first round, and that was over 30 years ago for both of those players. So Green Bay has done just fine as a franchise with finding very good wide receivers outside of the first round. Let's take this in a different direction and look at this even from a non-Packers standpoint. So what we're hoping for when you're a Packer fan and they're going to draft a wide receiver this year, this is an all-in season, right? Maybe next year you get another shot with Aaron Rodgers, although that's not guaranteed, but maybe next year, maybe this is a 2-year window, maybe it's a 3-year window, but everyone is hyper-focused on this year. So what you're hoping is that whatever wide receiver that they pick, you're hoping that they can get to that 800-yard mark, like be a good receiver, right? I'm not talking about 1,000 yards. I'm talking like a nice 800-yard season. That would be very helpful to this team. Well, 19 players at wide receiver, 19 rookies, I should say, at wide receiver have gone over 800 yards in their rookie season since 2015. So 2015, 19 wide receivers over 800 yards. Of those 19, only 8 of them were actually first-round picks. 8 of them. And some of the players that were not first-round picks, pretty darn good players. Amon-Ra St. Brown, T. Higgins, Chase Claypool, A.J. Brown, Terry McLaurin, DK Metcalf, Deebo Samuel, Juju Smith-Schuster, Cooper Kupp, Michael Thomas. There have been a lot of very good wide receivers that have been taken in the second and third rounds and beyond. And again, only 8 of the 19 wide receivers who have gone over 800 yards in their rookie season since 2015 were actually first-round picks. So let's take a look at that round by round, or year by year. 2015, 6 wide receivers taken in the first round. Only 1 of them was over 800 yards. In 2016, 4 wide receivers taken in the first round. None were over 800 yards. 2017, 3 taken in the first round. None over 800 yards. 2018, there were 2, 1 of which was over 800 yards. 2019, there were 2, none over 800 yards. 2020, there were 6, with their 3 over 800, and then 2021 there were 5 with 3 over 800. So there have been 6 over the last 2 seasons, but that has been the exception to the rule. In fact, in the previous 6 seasons before that, there were only 2 first-round picks who went over 800 yards in their rookie year. So in total, since 2015 to 2021, 28 wide receivers were taken in round 1, and only 8 of them were over 800 yards in their rookie season. 8 out of 28. And of those 8, only 2 of them were actually taken pick 22 or later. Why is that important? Well, Green Bay picks at 22 and 28. The 2 exceptions, Calvin Ridley and of course Justin Jefferson. So it's not impossible, but maybe not super likely that you're picking somebody 22 through 32 in that range and actually getting a real solid contributor. Now, of course, that's statistically speaking over the course of 2015 through 2021, things can change, draft classes are different, but it's at least worth pointing out here. The other thing I want to mention is that the Packers have a type at wide receiver, or excuse me, just in first round picks. They have a specific type with first round picks. So since Ted Thompson took over, so Ted Thompson to Brian Gutekunst, they've had 17 first round picks. 14 of them have been what I consider premium positions: quarterback, defensive line, corner, edge, or offensive tackle. Those 5 positions, which are generally deemed premium positions in the NFL: quarterback, defensive line, corner, edge, and offensive tackle. 14 of the 17 have played one of those 5 positions. Meanwhile, of the 17, 0 running backs, 0 wide receivers, 0 tight ends. They have not valued playmakers with any of their 17 picks. So they sort of have a history of not spending at this particular position. And why is that? Why does Green Bay go in that direction? Well, if you think of a course of a game, right? You're looking at normally about 150 snaps per game, 65 on offense, 65 on defense, and about 20 on special teams. That can vary game by game, but on average, about 65 on offense, 65 defense, 20 on special teams. So for example, if you take a run-stuffing defensive tackle who is primarily a run defender, who's going to be on the field for 25 to 30 snaps per game, you're looking at 30 out of 150 snaps, 1 out of every 5 snaps in the entire game, maybe 20 snaps that he's playing. Now, 20%, of snaps that he's playing is he actually in the game. Now, of those 20%, how many is he actually affecting? If it's a pass, probably none of them. If it's a pitch outside, probably not that either. So they may have a very small ROI on how many plays they're actually affecting. Same thing with a deep safety. If you're playing a deep safety, maybe 10, 15 times the ball actually gets down in their area of the field or they're affecting the play. Maybe it's even more. Maybe it's 20, maybe it's 30. But again, 20% of the game for that player that they actually have an opportunity to make an impact on. Now, for example, a running back may have a lot more where they're in the game. Maybe they're playing 50 snaps a game and maybe they're either blocking in pass protection or they're running the football or they're going out as a wide receiver. Maybe they're having a much bigger impact, but we know that teams can find running backs everywhere and you can find very good ones even as undrafted free agents or late in the draft. Hello, Aaron Jones, 5th round pick. And we could go on and on about the different running backs in the league that have been taken all over from late round picks to undrafted, etc. So you have to remember of which positions are important and have ROI and which ones can you not find everywhere. And more often than not, those positions that are having a huge impact play after play and are playing the highest percentage of snaps are going to be your quarterback, your offensive linemen, your defensive linemen, your edge rushers. Those are not only going to be your premium positions that you're getting a lot of snaps from, but a lot of ROI. They're affecting the game in a lot of different ways, and they're difficult to find, which is why you spend premium picks on them. And then the next tier below that I would say would be cornerback and wide receiver, which again, Green Bay spent a lot on defensive backs and corners over the course of the year, not as much on wide receiver, but I think that could change with the fact that now guys like Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, etc. are getting $30 million per year deal. That probably puts them closer to those premium position players. But that is not a position that Green Bay has typically valued with their first round picks. In fact, never since Ted Thompson and Brian Gutekunst have been in charge. Additionally, the Packers very much have a type at wide receiver. 200 plus pounds, physical, athletic, the ability to block on the outside, usually very young, and they need to fit the scheme. In addition, Green Bay really does not have any need for a slot receiver because, as I've gone over and over, Randall Cobb, Amari Rodgers, and Allen Lazard are probably going to take all those snaps already. They very much need somebody on the outside. So let's take a look at the potential first-round wide receivers to see if any of these actually fit the profile. Drake London, maybe, but he could end up being a big slot in his rookie season as he sort of makes his transition to the NFL, and we're not exactly sure on how he would have tested out and if he would have met all of Green Bay's thresholds. In addition, there's a very good chance he's gone by pick 22. Jameson Williams does not meet their weight thresholds, is coming off a torn ACL, probably is gone and is not a good blocker. Chris Olave, terrible blocker, doesn't meet their weight thresholds. Garrett Wilson, not a blocker, doesn't meet their weight thresholds. Treylon Burks, the athletic testing it does not fit their normal thresholds. Agility is a major issue, which again, they normally prioritize, and he's probably a slot guy to start. Jahan Dotson, size, blocking, both an issue, may not be a outside guy to start, may also start in the slot. Sky Moore probably starts in the slot. John Mechie probably starts in the slot. All of those guys, and a couple of those aren't even probably first rounders, but probably have something where Green Bay says maybe that's not actually our type or our guy. The three guys, or maybe 3 or 4 guys that we've gone over that could make some sense, George Pickens, Alec Pierce, Christian Watson, Jalen Tolbert, where would you like to get those guys? In the second round. That's where you're probably targeting them. And all of a sudden, if you're, Green Bay and you pick 28 and you see those 4 guys all still on the board, you might say, hey, we'll move back to pick, maybe 33, move back 5 spots, probably figuring that those 4 guys are not all going to be gone. And then you get to 33 and maybe all 4, maybe 3 of the 4 are left, and maybe you move back. Or maybe they go the 2 of their premium positions in round 1, and all of a sudden at pick 40, Pickens comes off the board, or like pick 35, Pickens comes off the board. Pick 39, Watson comes off the board. All right, now can you get from, their first second round pick, was it 53, up until pick 40 to get Pickens? Probably, or get Alec Pierce? Probably. Like, there's a variety of different ways that Green Bay could do this. But the point is that where the value is for the type of wide receiver that they want, the wide receivers that fit within their offense, it's much more likely that those wide receivers are probably taken in the second round. And some of the best deep threats that fit the profile that Green Bay likes are probably taken more 3rd, 4th, maybe even 5th round in this draft. So don't be shocked or surprised if Green Bay takes a wide receiver in the 2nd and then takes another in either the 3rd, 4th, or 5th round. Maybe they take another flyer on a 6th or 7th round guy as well. But don't be shocked if this isn't 2 firsts or a 1st and a 2nd or a 1st and a 3rd. I would very much see this as maybe a 2nd and 3rd or 2nd or 4th round draft for Green Bay. So just want to cover that because I think there's a much stronger possibility than people are giving it credit for. And I know it's going to happen, right? Green Bay doesn't take 2 wide receivers or any wide receivers on day 1. They take an edge rusher and an offensive tackle, and everyone freaks the heck out. So just remember all of the reasons we just discussed as to why that very well may be the case. Now, Green Bay could easily go wide receiver round 1. They could like any of the guys that we've talked about. They could move up in the draft if they really like somebody. Maybe Drake London is somebody they really like and think he can play outside, and maybe they move up to get him, or maybe he falls to 22. Maybe they take somebody outside of their normal thresholds. They may feel like they have to. They may say, you know what? Garrett Wilson, we love. We know that he's not our normal type, but we think he can be a major playmaker on the outside, and we're going to move up to pick 12 to get him or something. Okay, maybe they do that. I don't think they would, but maybe they will. They could even take Pickens, Watkins, or maybe even Alec Pierce in late round 1. That wouldn't shock me either. Maybe they move from 28 to 32 and take one of those guys. Would not shock me. So it's definitely within the realm of possibility that they could take a receiver, but no way, shape, or form do I think it's a guarantee. And that's all I want to go over, is just don't be shocked or surprised if they go through round 1 and don't end with a wide receiver. And based on everything we just discussed, I promise you that can be totally okay. That's going to do it for me today. Thank you so much for joining me. Always appreciate you. I'll be right back here tomorrow with an all new episode. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.